This story is called Brer Tiger and the Big Wind. Long ago, the animals tended crops just like people did. And so, when the rain fell steady and gentle, and the sun shone down warm and golden, the harvests were good. But one year, no rain fell, and the sun boiled down red. The crops withered in the fields, and the fruits dried up on the trees. The animals began to suffer. The springs and the creeks dried up. There was no water to drink and no food to eat, except in one place, and that was Clayton Field. Now at Clayton Field, there was a cool, fresh spring that bubbled up from the earth, and nearby grew a great old pear tree, covered with sweet golden fruit. But Brer Tiger had taken up a place at the foot of that pear tree. Now, the animals came to Clayton Field to see if they couldn't get a sip of water and a bite of a pear or two. But when they came up the road and drew close to the tree, Brer Tiger reared up and hollered, "Woof, woof, y'all get away or I'll eat you up." Well, the animals shrank back down the road, and there they cringed and huddled. And that's where Brer Rabbit found them. Now, Brer Rabbit came hippity-hopping up the road just like there was nothing wrong. "Well, brothers and sisters, why do I find you here?" "Oh, Brer Rabbit, we went to Clayton Field to see if we couldn't get some of that sweet spring water and some of those delicious pears. But Brer Tiger reared up against us. 'Woof, woof,' he hollered. 'Y'all get away or I'll eat you up.' So here we are." "Now, brothers and sisters, that ain't right," said Brer Rabbit. "Ain't right for one animal to own all the food and the water? Come closer, brothers and sisters. Let's see what we can figure out about this." And so the animals crowded around Brer Rabbit, and he began to think and talk and whisper. After a while, he said, "Now, y'all be ready tomorrow. You be in your places before the sun rises, and we'll set this plan in motion." Well, the animals all went away, and so did Brer Rabbit. Now, the next morning, in that purple twilight before the sun rose, the animals began to take their places according to Brer Rabbit's plan. First to come in was Brer Bear, and he had a big old club over one shoulder. And he took up his place right next to a big old hollow log on the edge of the forest there near the road. Next to come in was Brer Cooter Snapping Turtle, and he crawled right into that hollow log. Next came the great birds of the air, and they flew up to the top of the tall pine trees on the edge of the forest. That was Brer Eagle and Brer Hawk and Brer Turkey Vulture. Now, into the middle branches came the smaller crawling creatures, possum and raccoon and squirrel. Down lower and in the bushes and on the ground among the leaves and the grasses and the sticks were the smaller critters, the mice and the shrews and the creepy crawlies of all kinds. Now, along about half an hour after the sun rose, Brer Rabbit came walking along the big road, and he was carrying a big braided grass rope over his shoulder. And as he walked along toward Clayton Field, he sang, "Big wind a-comin', big wind a-comin', big wind a-comin', gon' blow all the people off the earth." Well, that was the signal for all the animals to commence a horrible noise and racket. Brer Bear began to beat on that hollow log with his great big club, bick-a-bam, bam, bam. And inside that hollow log, Brer Cooter, Snapping Turtle began to stomp his hard, scaly feet, bick-a-boom, boom, boom. Up in the tall pine trees, the great birds of the air began to flap their wings so hard that the trees began to sway. Down below, the crawling, climbing animals began to shake the branches. And the little critters began to make all the noise and racket that they could. Meanwhile, Brer Rabbit was still a-singing, "Big wind a-comin', big wind a-comin', big wind a-comin', gon' blow all the people off the earth." Well, Brer Bear was a-beatin', bick-a-bam, bam, bam. And Brer Cooter, Snapping Turtle was a-stompin', bick-a-boom, boom, boom. The trees was swaying, the branches was shaking, the leaves was flying, and the animals was crying, "Tie me, Brer Rabbit, tie me, Brer Rabbit." Well, about that time, Brer Tiger, who had been asleep at the foot of the pear tree, woke up. "Woof, what's this? What's all this noise and racket?" And he bounded over down the road toward Brer Rabbit. "What's this, Brer Rabbit? What's this about tying somebody?" "Well now, Brer Tiger, you've been asleep. There's a big wind a-comin', bigger than any cyclone you ever saw. And if you ain't tied down, you're gonna blow right off the earth. So I gotta tie all these critters." Meanwhile, Brer Bear was a-beatin', bick-a-bam, bam, bam. Brer Cooter, Snapping Turtle was a-stompin', bick-a-boom, boom, boom. The big birds were flapping, and the trees were swaying, and the branches were shaking, and the leaves were flying, and the animals were crying, "Tie me, Brer Rabbit, tie me, Brer Rabbit." "Brer Rabbit, you best tie me too," said Brer Tiger. "I don't want to be blowing off the earth." "Oh, now, Brer Tiger, I can't be bothered with you. I've got all these other animals to tie down first. Can't do you. No, I cannot. Surely cannot." Well, Brer Bear was a-beatin', bick-a-bam, bam, bam. Brer Cooter, Snapping Turtle was a-stompin', bick-a-boom, boom, boom. The trees was swaying, and the branches was shaking, and the leaves was a-flying, and the animals was a-crying, "Tie me, Brer Rabbit, tie me, Brer Rabbit." "This is a terrible wind. I'm afraid," said Brer Tiger. "Tie me, Brer Rabbit." "Nope, can't be bothered with you. Got all these other animals to tie. There's a hurricane comer bigger than any that's ever been. Gotta tie all these other animals." "Well now," said Brer Tiger, "look-a here. I'll just stand up right against this tall pine tree. I'll put my back right up against the trunk, and you can tie me right here. Please, Brer Rabbit, tie me. I don't want to blow off the earth." Well, Brer Bear was a-beatin', bick-a-bam, bam, bam. Brer Cooter, Snapping Turtle was a-stompin', bick-a-boom, boom, boom. The big birds was flapping, the trees was swaying, the branches was shaking, the leaves was flying, and the animals was tying. "Tie me, Brer Rabbit, tie me, Brer Rabbit. Tie me, Brer Rabbit," cried Brer Tiger. "I'm afraid." "Oh, well now, maybe I'll take time out and tie you after all, Brer Tiger. You look so pitiful there." So Brer Rabbit walked over to Brer Tiger, where he stood up straight and tall against that pine tree. And Brer Rabbit took a length of that braided grass rope and he looped it around Brer Tiger's neck and he pulled it tight. "Whoop," said Brer Tiger. Now Brer Rabbit took another length of that braided grass rope and he wrapped it around Brer Tiger's middle and he pulled it tight. "Whoop," said Brer Tiger. And now Brer Rabbit took another length of that grass rope and he tied it around Brer Tiger's back legs and he pulled it tight. "Whoop," cried Brer Tiger. "Now, Brer Tiger, see can you move?" Brer Tiger couldn't move. He could hardly breathe. These ropes were so tight around him. And when Brer Rabbit saw that Brer Tiger couldn't move, he said, "Y'all animals, hush your fussing and come gather around and see what we have done together." And so the animals quit making all that noise and came up close and wrapped themselves around Brer Rabbit as he stood there next to Brer Tiger, tied against that pine tree. You see here? Here is Brer Tiger, and I've tied him tight to this pine tree, and he can't move none at all. Now, y'all animals, you go get your croaker sacks and your buckets, and you come and get all the pears and all the sweet fresh water that you want. 'Cause Brer Tiger ain't going nowhere. And Brer Tiger, you can stay here tied to this pine tree until this grass rope rots off of you. For the Lord does not love a stingy man. And that is the story of Brer Tiger and the Big Wind.